Okay, welcome back to another episode of Words That Kill. And today's guest is Vanessa Giunta. I hope I pronounced that right.
Me too.
And and we are discussing when villains kill for fun. So I'm going to let her introduce herself now, so take it away.
All right. Hi, I am Venessa Giunta. I write the urban fantasy Soul Cavern series. It is an urban fantasy with horrific elements. I tend to write more urban fantasy than I do straight horror, except for short stories. All my short stories end up in horror. I don't know why. I'm also a professional editor. I do freelance work for indie authors and contract work for small presses as well.
Okay, so when you are crafting a villain who enjoys his job a little too much, do you prefer flamboyant characters or the more dark and sinister, hiding in the shadows type?
I tend to I like them both, let me just say that, but I think I tend to gravitate a little bit more towards the dark and mysterious kind of character that has a hidden agenda and that sort of thing, so I think I lean more towards that, although there's nothing wrong with a funny flamboyant one too.
Okay, so what types of murderous scenarios have you written for your more deranged villains?
So, in that book, and this is a little spoilery, but not terribly, um, I have a scene where there's a group of people that have been herded into a hedge maze and they're being hunted. And in one of them, the main character of the scene actually sees one of the other characters get caught and they're literally their heart ripped out of their chest right in front of them. So that's pretty murderous, I think. Also, I have another story that is going to be coming out in an anthology soon, and it's I like psychological torment and psychological horror a lot, and so, like, it basically completely obliterates their body and then heals them and does it again. Heals them and does it again, so that it's also like a psychological death, not just a physical death, and I feel like that's pretty gruesome, I think. I find that a little bit more scary than just being murdered. I mean, it's all
Mhm.
horrible. I don't want any of those things to happen to me. I do find, also when I'm reading, not just writing, but when I'm reading, I always find those more like they scare me more than just the body getting, the body dying. The death of the mind is
Mm.
more frightening to me than the death of the body.
Yeah, and I think a reader's imagination can be more powerful than the writer's words sometimes as well. So,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, because especially if you've got some kind of, predisposition to a particular type of horrific death or torture or whatever, and that's not to say that writers should intentionally exploit someone's trauma, but you as human beings, we can't get through life without trauma, right? We're
mm,
traumatized, you know, on the regular pretty much. And, so, like, each human, every person comes to the stories with their own sets of trauma and their own sets of triggers. And, sometimes that like, those things and not even actual trauma sometimes. Sometimes it's just sort of, not something that maybe puts you into a fetal position or something like that, but just experiences that we've had, and that will always play into it, and it can make it more scary for the reader.
and
So,
sometimes the
yeah,
books give you trauma. So,
that part too right there. Mhm. It's
yeah.
funny because Stephen King, like, I grew up reading Stephen King, like, he is still legit one of my top authors, even though he does not stick the ending as often as he should. He's not great at endings, but he's great at all the rest of it. But, like, I remember reading an interview with him about how he would never sleep with anything over the edge of the bed, like a foot or a hand or anything, because he was always afraid of, like, something grabbing him. I mean, even not just as a kid, but even as an adult, he still doesn't sleep with and I didn't have that trauma until he put it there. Like, I never had a problem with my hand off the side of the bed, but then I read that
Yeah.
damn interview with Stephen King, and now I'm like, "All right, let me get everything inside the boat."
Yeah, well, I never had a problem with dinosaurs either until I read Jurassic Park. Now it's like, yeah, no.
Yeah,
Never read another dinosaur book again and probably never will. Michael Crichton's way
yeah.
too descriptive, I'm telling you.
Right, right.
Anyway,
Oh,
so do you play these scenes? Like you mentioned a little bit about this, but do you play these scenes for shocking impact or do you prefer to leave the details to the reader's imagination?
I think it depends a lot on the scene. I definitely do like to put detail in. Um, but I try to it's one of those things where if you're gonna do it with intent, right? Do it with intention. And so when I do put serious details in the scene that are gruesome, it's very specific. It's for very specific reasons because this is what I want the reader to see. And what the reader sees around that, they can make up and that's fine. But I try to lead the reader to the horror. You know what I mean? Does that
Mm,
make sense? Kind of
yeah.
lead them in the direction that I want to go. So it really depends as to how much detail I put in. It kind of depends on the actual scene itself and what the goal of the scene is. Yeah.
What would you say are the main differences between a villain that enjoys killing, like a psychopath, and one that is a little less enthusiastic about death?
Less enthusiastic. Um, I think it's their goal, like what their end goal. I think that's what makes them different, right? So because like a villain that enjoys killing, the killing is the goal. The killing may also like have another goal too. Like if you think about like Dexter, his goal was to kill because he got the thrill from that. Like that was his thing. But there were also other reasons. But then characters that are not, say, a psychopath or sociopath, and they are not kind of unhinged in that way, they may still kill, but the goal may be different. Like the goal may be money, or the goal may be to get this competition out of the picture, or the killing isn't the goal. There's a different goal, and the killing is the way to get to that goal.
Yeah. I never thought about it like that, but you're right. So, when you have a sociopathic villain, remorse and mercy generally aren't strong traits.
No,
Um,
not
so
usually.
how do you add depth to those characters and prevent deterioration into a caricature?
Yeah, that's hard, right?
Mm,
But I actually have a couple friends in my life who are actually sociopaths. And let's be clear for everyone, most sociopaths are not murderers. Let's
mm,
just put it. I mean, they may leave tragedy in their wake when they come through someone's life, but most of them are not murderers. They do abide by the law and all that kind of stuff. And it was interesting when I found out, because then I really just started really paying attention to how they move through the world. And what I find is that most sociopaths, and I can't speak to psychopaths because I don't know that as well, but most sociopaths are very charming. For other people, it feels like they're connected, right? For the
mm.
sociopath themselves, you're not a person until they see you as a person. Human beings in the world are just objects to them, at least the ones that I know. And like I've actually had these conversations because, like this one friend, he said, I'm a sociopath. He said, and it wasn't like a label of honor because, some people take, I'm an asshole or I'm a whatever as a label of honor. And it wasn't that. He was just like, I'm a sociopath. He said, I don't feel feelings the way you feel feelings. And so I would ask him questions and I would talk to him and I would watch him and see how he related to people. And he would say straight up, he would say, "You're not a person. You're not a person to me." Now I did eventually get to person level, but when they first meet someone, it's not a person. So, but what I did find in getting to know, particularly this person, there are things that are important to them. There are things they care about. There are people that they do care about. And if you make sure that you include the things that are important to them, and it could be upward mobility in their career, it could be music. Like this particular one, he loved cocktails. Like he was a cocktail connoisseur. So I think that to keep it from becoming a caricature, or even something that the reader can figure out before you're ready for them to figure it out, you figure out what your characters actually do value, because it's not that they don't value things, it's that they don't connect emotionally the way non-psychopaths do. So I find that layering those things in, because it shows that they care and that also makes them human, but they don't care about the same things that the rest of us care about necessarily.
So, what other cliches or tropes do you avoid when writing darker villains, and what ones do you lean into?
Oh, I avoid violence for violence sake, and like particularly violence against women, violence against children. I don't do fridging. Fridging is not like, and I look at some of my older stories and I did do things like fridging, but I won't anymore. And when I say avoiding violence for violence sake, I'm again going back to intentionality. It's If I'm going to have excessive violence, it's going to be for a reason. Because if I just it's very much the boy that cried wolf, right? If I'm just putting violence in all the time, then it's not important. It's never important. So I try to avoid violence just for violence sake and make it actually work for what I'm trying to do. I lean into the idea that everyone is the hero of their own story. There are very few people that are just everything they do is evil. Everything they do is awful.
What advice do you have for building tension in scenes where the villain is playing games with their potential victims?
Oh, that should always be in the victim's point of view. I mean, you can absolutely do it in the bad guy's point of view too, but I think if you really want to ratchet up the tension, especially if the bad guy's playing with the victim, that's where the most tension is going to lie, because the victim's going to be afraid and most likely confused. And playing that up is where your tension, like, it's just like gold. Bad guy is trying to like bring up their hopes so that they can then crush them psychologically and emotionally as well as physically. Yeah, I really feel like that's where just the gold lies when it comes to building tension. Is that how you do it? Like, what do you do? Because I want to hear your point of view too.
A little bit. I do like to play in the villain's point of view
Mhm.
for some of my stories, but yeah, you do want to get it from the victim's point of view. I mean, and all the good slasher movies do it, so
Mhm.
it's a
Yeah.
pretty tried and true technique. So
Yeah,
you're
for sure, and I do think that the villain's point of view, where you can really, like, kinda get the reader, is especially if they are a sociopath or a psychopath, their distance, like, their emotional distance from what they're doing, or where they get emotions that they shouldn't be having for what they're doing, like, that can also, like, if you
yeah.
zoom in on that, because how different they are than,
I
your
did
usual humans.
I did do that once in a scene with, but this was a story from the villain's point of view because it's my villain's point of view book.
Oh,
Um,
well, I mean,
yeah.
what?
Anyway, and so the one of the reader's favorite villains is Balthazar. He's a demon that hunts souls that escape from hell. During the scene, the mother is pleading for her son, and for a moment, from his point of view, it looks like he's going to give mercy, and then he doesn't.
Man, he's a demon,
Yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, what did you expect? Really?
right? You should never have hoped, ever. I love
Oh,
playing with
and
readers.
then the mother goes to hell too, so he takes a 2 for 1.
Oh, bonus for the demon!
Yeah. Okay, so what have various victim reactions have you played with?
For sure, like, running.
Yeah, that's pretty
Like,
basic, that one.
Yes, like running, but also like when they're trapped, there's a lot of like logicking, trying to logic the villain into letting them go or, you know, having mercy or whatever. Also, like fawning. Basically, all the reactions that humans have to fear, fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, like all of those things. Because also, like, some of it too is thinking, okay, what would I try to do in that situation? Like, what if I were faced, God forbid, knock on wood, I hope it never happens. If I were faced with someone like this, what things would I do to try to get out of it? So yeah, so a lot of mine are different ways that I think I would try to do it to get myself away from some crazy person who's trying to murder me.
Yeah, I guess, well, I suppose in a lot of ways, a lot of writers do that. I mean,
Yeah,
because I mean, it's all coming out of our heads, so it's like we're thinking ways, how
right.
do we get out of this?
And in some cases, it's like, oh crap, I wrote myself into a corner. How do I get out of this?
Mm. Okay, so have any of your hero characters sacrificed their morals in order to survive a deranged villain?
Mm. I'm a big fan of not in real life so much, but on the page, I'm a real fan of having no good choices. Just having to choose from all kinds of really bad, things. I'm trying to think if any of them have actually I I do have not in any of the books I've or the stories I've released, I don't think. Um but, one I'm working on right now, one of the main characters is going to have to they have, a moral code that they live by, and they're going to have to suspend that to, in order to confront and maybe not defeat a big bad guy. I'm a big fan of moral choices you don't wanna have to make in fiction. I don't like it at all in real life, but in fiction, I'm all about it,
Mm. No, that's pretty much how you build conflict and plot in fiction,
right?
is having the bad choices.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
that's how I, ended, Past Legends, is the moral choice that was not a good
Ugh,
one, but had to be made.
had to be
The
made.
Yeah, and the next book is going to be the consequences of that moral choice,
Ooh,
so
nice.
yeah, so, have any of your villains killed bystanders, children, or animals?
I have a whole short story that is about a woman who kills children. She is the narrator, she is the point of view character, and she is unreliable. And, it starts out she's baking cookies for the neighborhood kids, and, she's an older woman, like grandmotherly type, and she's baking these cookies, so she's there, and then she hears the school bus, and she goes to her porch, and all the kids come up on the porch, because they know, it's like Friday or whatever, and they get cookies on Friday, and she gave one of the little boys an extra one because he got an A plus on his math test or something like that, and they go off, whatever. And then she takes the cookies for the special kids and gets in her car and goes down to the river where there's a bridge and abutment under the bridge, and there are homeless kids living there, and it turns out she's poisoning them because to save them from the light. But her point of view is all about what she's doing for the kids and how she's being good to them, but she kills them all of them, they're all dead. So, yes,
Okay,
yes,
so
I have had characters that have killed children. I never gotten any I've never heard anything myself,
okay,
so
so
about
the readers were not actually, the readers actually don't have as much problem with killing kids as they do with killing animals.
right, true. I don't think I've ever killed an animal. I don't I don't know that I've ever killed I'm trying to think, have I ever killed an animal in the story? I don't think so, because I don't know that I could.
Yeah,
Like, I can kill humans way easier.
I haven't killed animals on page. Several animals have bit the biscuit off page.
Sure, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because I mean, when you destroy villages and blow up things, the animals go with the people.
I mean, yes, that's true. They don't magically get airlifted somewhere else
But yeah,
just
I
in
mean,
time.
yeah, I've killed off kids in several stories, and I've never had a
Mhm.
problem with reader pushback on any of it. In fact,
Yeah.
one of my stories is very, very disturbing as far as a child murder. It doesn't actually happen on page. You
Mm.
just know it's gonna because it ends with the story with the kid being taken.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
you know what's gonna happen because the
Yes,
rest
you
of the
know what's
story has
coming.
pretty much told you what this guy is like. So yeah.
Yeah. And those are the good ones that you leave to the
Mm.
reader, right? You leave to the reader to do it,
Yeah, and
because you've
honestly,
already set it up.
I thought that might get some pushback from readers
Mhm.
because that's why I put it in as the very first story in the collection. Because I figured if they read that story and they're fine with it, the rest of the stories won't be so bad.
I also think too, a lot depends on the genre you're writing in. Because if you're writing in horror, horror readers
Mm,
are not going to be necessarily put off by something like that. Like in general, like if they have their
yeah.
own stuff, then yes. But like the general horror reader, I mean, if you grew up reading Stephen King, kids got killed all the time in
Mm,
Stephen King stuff. Dean Koontz, any of those, any
yeah.
of the big horror names, even Anne Rice, for goodness sake. And I wouldn't even say she writes straight horror. She writes gothic horror if
Mm,
she writes horror. And I agree with you that I think that animals get more, like if you kill animals, you get more pushback than if you kill any kind of human. So,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, they do have a website, did they kill a dog for movies?
Yes. Yes, I know, I've seen that.
So, how far do you push an unredeemable villain into evil territory? And do you have a line you won't cross?
I have no limit to how far I will push an unredeemable villain. They'll do anything. Now, not everything will be on the page. All right. I'm never gonna write, for example, a violent sexual assault. I'm never gonna write that. I mean, I don't like to use never very often, but I'm pretty confident that I can say that I'm never gonna write that. Well, I'm gonna say I'm never gonna write it for like prurient interest, right? You know what I mean? I can't imagine a situation where I would need to put something like that on the page, but that doesn't mean that a villain can't do it off the page. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like a villain can be as bad as whatever, but I'm not always going to put the details of the worst things on the page. So,
Yeah, I mean, there are some details you can leave off. I've done that. Like one of my stories, there was the husband did commit a sexual assault against the wife, but it wasn't. She just said he did. There was nothing shown.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I mean.
I
That's what I
mean
mean.
that
Like
that was the
reference to
reason why
it.
she wanted revenge. So
Yes, absolutely. Like reference to it. Yes, the reference is going to be on the page. The existence of it is on the page,
mm,
but the actual thing that happened, the actual narrative of the assault or whatever, that's not something that I'm willing to write
yeah.
on the page.
Do you think sociopathic villains have to die to give the reader a satisfying conclusion, or do you think any form of punishment is enough?
I don't think any form of punishment is enough, but I
Okay.
think there are forms of punishment that are not death that actually would be preferable, because there are some villains where you just want to see him tortured for eternity.
Mhm.
Like I feel like
Yeah.
that would be a better punishment than death, because sometimes death is too fast.
Mm.
Death is too easy. Death is too merciful
Yeah,
for some of
that
these.
that actually happened to my evil pirate. Death actually came and killed him, and then took his soul to the afterlife, and he's eating it piece by piece.
Eating his own soul or eating the afterlife?
No, eating his soul. That's what death does in my book. She eats souls.
Oh,
So
oh, I like it. So
she snacks on him from time to time. Exactly.
a little taste, a little nibble.
Yeah.
See,
So
and
that.
I think that is a great punishment. So
Mhm.
yeah, honestly, I would rather it. I mean, I'm okay if they die, but if they die, it needs to be a horrendous death. Otherwise, I'm okay with just like making them suffer the rest of their life or all eternity. I'm open to that as well.
Okay, so and the next questions are just the little fun ones we ask everyone. So, do you enjoy killing off characters, or do you struggle with writing it, or does it depend on the story?
Well, it definitely depends on the story and the character. I'm not squeamish about killing off characters at all. I actually really enjoy killing off important characters because I know that has a big impact on the reader. And that's really what it's about, right? I really enjoy manipulating my readers. So there's actually in the final book of the series that I'm working on, one of the main characters dies. They have a lot to atone for, and their manner of death, the way I've set it up, it is kind of an eloquent atonement for things that they had done previous in their life.
Okay, so what is the most creative or memorable death you've written for any character?
Oh, I one time had a character tied to a roller coaster track, and then, but like in this weird way where it was almost like they were like this, like kind of crucified on the track. So like this, like from the armpits up were above the track, and the rest of the body was hanging below the track. And yeah, that was pretty grisly because a roller coaster came by and just ran over the whole top part of their body, and it was pretty gross.
Mm.
Very exciting.
Well, that is one of the top 10, I think, of our memorable deaths. That one.
Yep. That story's never been published. I should dig that one up. I wrote that when I was young and angry young woman. But yeah, I should dig that up and see if that story is actually any good. Probably not.
Okay, so what is the oddest or most notable thing you've researched related to writing a character death?
Oh, I did some research as to which body parts are more edible than others.
Okay,
Again, I was a young, angry woman.
which ones are? Just curiosity here.
The liver has lots and lots of nutrients, just like in other mammals.
Yeah.
So it's gonna pack the most nutrition, at least from what I remember. And the hardest thing to eat is the skin
Yeah,
because it's well, in this particular story, they didn't have any way to make fire yet, so they were having to eat raw. So yeah, it was pretty gross.
Okay, and on that note, we will wrap the interview up here. And I'd like to thank you for being a guest. It was a pleasure chatting with you as always.
Thank you, Anita.
Okay, and just tell our guests where they can find you and your books.
You can see this way. Right here, sleekbio.com/Venessa G, and it's Venessa with an E, not an A. That's probably the easiest way to just find all my links because I don't want anyone to try to spell my name because it's just not easy. So this is the easiest.
Okay, and that's it for this episode, and bye for now.
I had a whole little notebook that had a bunch of short stories like that. I should really see if I can find that notebook. I did find the old angsty poetry book that I wrote when I was a teenager. I did find that recently, so I wonder if I still have that notebook with all the gross stories in it.
Yeah, well, who knows? You might actually sell them one day.
I'll put them in a collection. Words that kill. I'll name it after your show.